Greeks vote in a high-stakes referendum on the nation's financial future. With polls now closed, results are set to start coming in this evening on whether the people said yes or no to Europe. Opinion polls show no in the lead. 2 days before the new deadline for a nuclear deal amid intensive high-level talks in Vienna, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says now is the time to finish a deal, but the parties are not yet at that point. Along with fighters of the Shiite Hezbollah, the Syrian army claims to have entered the rebel-held city of Zabadani, part of an offensive to capture the strategic border between Syria and Lebanon.
The News Today with Lucy Aharish.
Good evening and welcome to the news today. It's a crucial day for Greece, mired in a debt crisis and ongoing bailout talks. Greeks went to the polls today to vote in a referendum on the country's financial future. Citizens had to choose yes or no on a proposed European bailout plan to save their crumbling economy, with opinion polls showing no in the lead. Whichever way it goes, the implication could be significant for both Greece and the European Union. With polls now closed, initial results are expected to trickle in just about an hour. We'll follow it throughout this evening. But before we discuss, Ayman Siksik has the latest for us. Good evening. Thank you very much for
Good evening, Lucy.
So the latest updates from Greece, and it seems that Tsipras, for now, can be relaxed.
Right. Good news for Tsipras so far. The opinion polls are showing that the no is in the lead. It's interesting to see that so far it's the senior citizens in Greece who have voted the most, and we are seeing that the young people could sway the vote the other way. Now, Tsipras throughout this campaign has been doing some really nationalistic speeches. He's been talking about national pride, that this is about Greece not succumbing to Europe's will to make it do what it wants in order to get the bailout. And this is really the most important paragraph in Greece's story that we're telling tonight. It's the battle between pride and money, and the Greek public will see who will have the upper hand.
You know, this is very strange because during this weekend, we saw that there was also some kind of a criticism among the Greeks towards the government, because they are saying to themselves, okay, but we chose you, the government, to actually take decisions for us, and you are putting such a huge decision, such a huge burden on our shoulders, and basically we don't have the tools to actually decide if it's good for us or bad for us.
That's right, and surveys show that most Greeks don't really know the implications of a yes or a no vote, and he's taking a huge gamble. If he does get a no vote that he wants, he will have to stabilize Greece in really drastic measures. But if he can't do that, he will have to provide some really interesting explanations to the Greek people who have voted for him and given him this power. But before we continue discussing, let's take a look at the latest events of today from Greece.
Let's see.
It's crunch time for the Greek public. After months of high-level talks between the government and Eurozone leaders on a possible Greek exit from the monetary union, it's now up to the voters to have their say. The out-of-the-blue referendum, which took Eurozone leaders by surprise, was organized in just over a week and has divided an already economically fragile Greek society, which is being asked to decide whether or not to accept Europe's demands for future austerity. Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras, who wants a no vote, is more hard-pressed than ever to sway the poll in his favor.
The Greek people today send a very strong message, a message of dignity, determination. The message that Greece holds the choice for its destiny in its own hands.
But what would a yes or no result mean for Greece? A yes vote would be in favor of accepting European bailout funds in exchange for budget cuts on Greek spending, more austerity measures imposed on Greece's creditors, including the IMF. A no vote would be in favor of rejecting Europe's new austerity demands, pursuing a new bailout deal with better terms for the Greek government, but it would risk a possible exit from the Eurozone. Most alarmingly for Tsipras, a yes vote would signal that Greeks may have lost faith in the newly appointed premier and his left-wing Syriza party. an outcome which the Greek government describes as the result of, quote, European blackmail language, which has terrorized the Greek public.
Terrorist methods by which to blackmail us into accepting a non-viable agreement. Now, what is terrorism? It's the pursuit of political agendas by means of inspiring fear in people.
European persuasion methods aside, the Greek government may have put its own people in an equally tight spot on Sunday. As voters head to the polls for the referendum, they'll be looking at a complex set of choices that will determine the economic future of their country, all embodied in a simple yes or no question.
Yes, and still with me here in the studio is our correspondent Ayman Siksik. Ayman, it's very interesting what we just heard, that Europe is terrorizing the Greek. But if we will look at the definition maybe of terror, we can say that terror is the way that a person thinks that he's the only one who's right and nobody else is right and everybody's wrong. So in a way, maybe Greece is terrorizing Europe as well.
Well, it's funny that you say that because Germany is coming under fire for this right now. People are saying Germany once ruled the world militarily. It's now trying to rule the world economically by imposing these measures on Greece. But of course, Greece is doing the same. They're playing the same hand. And this is unprecedented. He's not giving up. Tsipras is not giving up. He's taking it past the last line and saying we're not going to be bent by Europe's power of what Greece's future will look like. We will determine our own future. It's
amazing that it seems that for the last few days we talked about the fact that maybe Tsipras climbed on a high tree and he is not able to actually go down from the tree. This is why he went to the people and he asked for their second support after they supported him by choosing him to the government. And it seems now that maybe, because we're seeing at the forum that the people just today looked in before they voted yes or no, 70 words that don't actually explain what is happening right now in Greece. And it seems for me that not even the government understands what are the implications that will be if Greece will actually get out of the Eurozone.
Well, in a way, there's two things going on here. First, I think the Greek government might have an interest of people not fully understanding what the consequences of both votes mean. This, by them, may sway the vote towards a no, which they want. The other issue is that the Eurozone project is now really coming under heavy fire. The Eurozone, as you know, was constructed during the Cold War for a pre-globalized world, for a much smaller Europe, which didn't include Greece. And what we're seeing right now is that the Eurozone is falling apart. Maybe it's time to consider that the Eurozone project has failed. And this is Germany's biggest worry. If Greece is out of the Eurozone, Italy might be next, and who knows who else will follow.
Portugal, Spain, they are waiting in line. And with us right now to see the reactions actually in Athens, with us right now live from Athens is correspondent Daniel Roth. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me, Daniel. So, Daniel, you spent the last 2 days in Athens. What are the feeling on the streets of Athens regarding the poll, regarding the referendum? How did you spend it? Did you spend 60 euros a day, basically?
Well, actually, it's dropped to 50 for most people because most of the machines are running out of 20-euro bills. But it's important to know that the vast majority of people we spoke to said they were going to vote no. And it seems like that's what's going to take it, but we've been warned over and over again not to listen to any of the exit polls until the Ministry of Interior announces what their final tallies are after 9 p.m.
So, Daniel,
but the mood here in the square is lighthearted. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So, Daniel, you spend the day, I believe that you went to the markets, you went to the supermarkets, you spend the day with people. Yes, we are seeing that.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Thank
you.
You spent the day,
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, of course. It's of course, Daniel. So what I'm saying is that basically you spend the last 2 days in Athens. You've been going through the markets, through the supermarkets, through the cafes. You know, tourism is a very, very important thing, aspect in the Greek economy. What did you see? What are the voices that you heard from the people who came to Greece and experienced this from a different point of view?
Well, most of the people on the ground right now were surprised to find this situation. They weren't expecting this, and so many of the tourists here on the ground didn't prepare. We've spoken to people who have been here for a few weeks, and they're running out of cash. They're worried about what's going to happen with the rest of their time. The people who came this week, by and large, were prepared. They had paid attention to the news and understood that it's going to be a tough week with the referendum, with the capital controls, ensuring that it would be hard to get cash out. And we've been also finding that more and more businesses are shutting down their credit card system, so they're only taking cash, which is making it that much harder for many tourists who, in many cases, don't want to carry cash. But most of the people, despite all this, say the same thing that they always say here, which is that the people here are by and large relaxed, by and large nice, and that they're enjoying their time here, even with the heightened nervousness and tension.
Yes, Daniel Roth, thank you very, very much from Athens. And of course, you will continue updating us about the exile polls that will get just very soon. I'm at 66. Thank you very much for being with me. Of course, you will continue also updating. And we're going from here to Vienna. In Vienna, intensive talks between the P5+1 world powers and Iran are continuing with 48 hours to go until the new deadline of July 7th. Meetings today lasted several hours between U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and his Iranian counterpart. They are set to be joined by foreign ministers from Russia, Britain, France, Germany, and possibly China. In a statement today, Kerry told reporters that they have made genuine progress, but are not yet where they need to be on several of the most difficult issues. And joining me right now from Vienna is diplomatic correspondent for the News Today, Eli Jochenberg in Vienna. Good evening. Thank you very, very much for joining us. So, Eli, the last updates about the 6th day of negotiations in Vienna.
Yes, Lucy, well, I have to tell you that in the last couple of days, the atmosphere here in Vienna was very cheerful. People here felt like, that's it, we've got it covered. It's only a matter of time now. It's only a matter of getting to the deadline, signing a deal and go home happy and satisfied. But only a few hours ago, a couple of hours ago, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry arrived to cool down the, upbeat atmosphere here. So let's hear what he had to say, and then we will continue talking.
And over the past few days, we have, in fact, made genuine progress. But I want to be absolutely clear with everybody. We are not yet where we need to be on several of the most difficult issues. And the truth is that while I completely agree with Foreign Minister Zarif that we have never been closer, at this point, this negotiation could go either way. If hard choices get made in the next couple of days, and made quickly, we could get an agreement this week. But if they are not made, we will not.
Yes, Eli, we just heard John Kerry. Everybody's talking about the fact that there will be no extension in these talks. Nobody wants this extension, but also we still understand that the problems between the two sides are still big. And if maybe 2 days ago we heard about the relief of the sanctions, today we're hearing about maybe some other difficulties that the two sides are talking about.
Yes, Lucy, but I don't think we need to get too excited from Kerry's statement. Yeah, he wanted to cool down the atmosphere. He wanted to regain control over the discourse. But if we will listen carefully to what he had to say, practically we don't hear anything new. We know that there's some serious progress being made. We know that the teams are working very hard, and we know that there are still hurdles ahead of us. So there's nothing substantially new that changed the picture. But the important thing in Kerry's statement is that he's practically approaching both the objectors at home in the U.S. or in Israel, for example, and to the Iranian as well. For the objectors, he said, we are not going to, look away and just sign a deal with any terms that we will be able to get, and that we will fight for our principles and for our terms. And to the Iranians, Kerry says that they will walk away if the deal will not be good enough. And another important message to the Iranians yesterday, the video of Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif was released, and there he was very optimistic and positive regarding the situation of the conversations. And Kerry sent a small bite to the Iranians, because the Americans are not very satisfied with the amount of information the Iranians are transferring to their own home journalists. So Kerry said, we're not handling the negotiations through the media, but direct talk. So these are maybe the more colorful things in Kerry's statements, but again, nothing substantial that changes the picture at the moment. The negotiations continue, and we are expecting to see many more discussions in the upcoming days until, of course, the much anticipated deadline.
Yes, Eli Ochenberg, thank you very, very much for this. And joining me right now is Iranian analyst, Mayor Javed Anfar. Good evening. Thank you very, very much for joining me. So, Mayor, hearing John Kerry is hearing more the subtext that he's saying than the text itself. Taking under the consideration that Mohammad Javad Zarif went out in a video saying to the Iranians, saying to the world that we are just about to seal a deal, we are just about to close it, and then John Kerry coming and telling him, okay, relax, because it's not like that, and don't put promises. But these promises basically are to the Iranian people and trying to calm the Iranian people, then to the rest of the world?
Well, number one, it could be because Mr. Zarif is feeling genuinely optimistic, and he's trying to boost the markets in Iran by such statements. And they have boosted the market. The Tehran Stock Exchange was up today. The rial was up against the dollar. The gold is down, and that's a good thing, because when people in Iran are relaxed, they don't buy gold, so gold goes down. But I think there could be another reason why he's doing it. He's trying to increase pressure on John Kerry by saying that, look, we are the optimistic ones. So
if the talks, in the place to increase pressure on John Kerry?
You see, the thing is that if on the odd chance that the talks fail, Iran doesn't want to take the blame. So the Iranians could say, we were the optimistic ones. We are the ones who wanted the deal. It's because of you, so therefore it'd be easier. I'm not sure. I don't have any proof that that's what Zarif wants to do, but that, he could use that. I think another thing is that Zarif promised for more cooperation with the Americans. Again, first of all,
because the Americans are smashing back, let's say, put it in that way, by saying, you know what, you are saying you're optimistic, but if we need to leave this table, we will leave the table and we won't look back.
They are, but the Iranian side has adopted a very optimistic strategy. It's very good for PR purposes. It's very good in terms of attracting public support. And I think the Iranian, Mr. Zarif, he's saying that Iran would be willing to cooperate with America against extremism. First of all, it's not Mr. Zarif's decision, it is Ayatollah Khamenei's decision. Second of all, the other thing is that, for example, if after such a deal, Iran and America can't reach a deal over ISIS, which is very probable because the hardliners in Iran see ISIS as an Israeli, Saudi, American invention, then he could say, well, the Americans didn't use the momentum to build on the relationship after a nuclear deal, so it's America's fault that we are where we are today. So I think, look, it makes sense, the strategy makes sense from the Iranian side in terms of if you want to look at the profit and loss balance sheet, this leaves Iran with a net profit in terms of PR. But we have to wait and see, Lucy. I think there's going to be a deal, and we have to look at the details. That's the most important thing. We are probably going to be sitting right here like the last time and listening patiently to issues such as the past military dimension, inspections, and let's judge this more on the
And of course,
details.
we will have to wait another month until it will pass in the American Congress and it will pass in the Majlis. And of course, it will give us another month to discuss these things.
I think from now till the American Congress, we're going to see the mother of all lobbying wars that we've never seen like before.
And you will be here to analyze them. Thank you very, very much for this, Mayor Jaffa Port. And we're going right now to see Eli Ochenberg was in Vienna and saw what the people in Vienna think about the big talks that are happening in their town. Let's see.
What could turn out to be one of the most crucial diplomatic turning points of our era is now brewing in the beautiful, quiet Austrian capital. The world's top diplomats are coming and going. Journalists from all across are packing hotels and restaurants, and the name Vienna is being mentioned all throughout the day. But the Viennese people are not too excited at best, or even have no idea that one of the most important decisions that could reshape the world has any connection with their city. The reason for this lack of awareness may lay in the fact that the global and European news plate in particular is pretty full.
There are a few big issues at the moment. As you know, there's a very difficult time in the European Union because of the situation in Greece. There were terrorist attacks in the last weeks, but the Iran nuclear talks are, of course, one of the main issues for us here in Austria.
But despite other pressing matters, the Viennese do hold a strong opinion on the looming agreement.
It's a good thing to start to get the Iran on the table to negotiate with them, because they are a factor in the Middle East.
I think it is important to reach a good solution where everybody is happy and nobody feels like they got the short end of the deal. I really hope that they reach a middle ground.
One way or another, in 2 days, the chances of history being made seem quite high, and Vienna will be part of it.
We hope that it will be possible to reach an agreement next week in Vienna, because such an agreement would bring peace and stability not only to the region, but also to the rest of the world. Therefore, we really much hope that it will be possible to have such an agreement next week.
Yeah, they're still eating schnitzel in Vienna. And we're going now to the Syrian war, where the U.S.-led coalition overnight carried out some of its heaviest airstrikes yet on the IS stronghold of Raqqa. Meanwhile, on the Syria-Lebanon border, a regime offensive backed by the Shiite Hezbollah is underway. Shai Ben-Ari has the story.
The struggle for control of Syria's cities and towns drags on. Following weeks of negative momentum for forces loyal to the regime of embattled Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, a new offensive has been launched by the Syrian army and Hezbollah, the Lebanese militant Shia organization, to retake the border town of Zabadani. On Sunday, Hezbollah fighters and Syrian soldiers entered Zabadani's western neighborhoods. The town was one of the first to fall into rebel hands, being conquered in 2012, the second year of the uprising, though parts have exchanged hands several times since. Today, the al-Qaeda-linked Nusra Front controls most of it. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights noted 14 Hezbollah militants have been killed, as well as 11 rebels, since the beginning of the offensive Saturday, with over 40 barrel bombs being dropped by regime helicopters. Zabadani is the only remaining rebel stronghold on the Syria-Lebanon border, with the regime and its allies eager for a battlefield victory after a string of setbacks. To the northeast, the city of Raqqa, the Islamic State's de facto capital, was the target of 16 coalition airstrikes Saturday, one of the most intensive bombardments against IS in Syria so far. A U.S. military spokesman said it would have a debilitating effect on the Islamic State's ability to conduct operations out of Raqqa. The strikes came, however, after the terrorist group published yet another mass execution video, displaying captive regime soldiers being shot amid the ancient ruins of IS-held Palmyra. It is unclear exactly when the footage was shot, but reports had previously emerged of IS executing a group of Syrian soldiers in Palmyra towards the end of May.
And with me right now to explain a little bit more what is happening in the last few days in Syria and Lebanon, Mideast editor for Israel Public Radio, Ilan Zinger. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming. You know, seeing this video in the weekend, it seems like somebody saying, let the show begin. And what a show it was for them.
They're trying to make a point here, ISIS, when they're showing this mass execution in Palmyra. First of all, everybody was expecting that they will do everything they can in order to destroy the antiques and the beautiful old city of Palmyra. But they didn't. They promised that they will do something, and then, as you can see behind you, the mass flag of ISIS, the black flag, and this massive execution. They're trying to make a point here. Don't think or don't believe the West that they are successful in targeting or in hurting our targets around Syria or Iraq.
And are they?
Yes, they are very, very, let's say, concerned. I'm talking about ISIS. They have a very good reason to be concerned because in the last weeks, we have seen some major success of the American-led coalition when it comes to ISIS. And this group, and this especially when it comes to convince the world outside that business is as usual, this is what we see.
Can we maybe try to connect what is happening, or maybe their worry about what is happening right now in Lebanon and Syria with what happened in the Sinai Peninsula by they are going on the hunt for money and looking for the money in the Sinai Peninsula?
Well, when it comes to the border between Syria and Lebanon, what's been going there for the last hours is a significant change. We're now seeing a very successful attempt by Hezbollah and the Syrian army to gain control over Zabadani, which is a very important access to the city of Damascus. So what we're seeing is maybe, first of all, they're saying we're trying to block all the rebels from entering Syria from Lebanon on the one hand. On the other hand, maybe we're seeing new attempts by Hezbollah to make a secure zone for its weapon smuggling from Syria to Lebanon, because Hezbollah understands today that it's only a matter of time until they see the Bashar al-Assad end in Syria. When it comes to Sinai, to the Sinai Peninsula, well, all these groups were there. Ansar Beit al-Maqdis and then Wilayat Sina. And shooting rockets on Israel was there a year ago, 2 years ago, but today they call themselves ISIS. This is the whole change here.
You know, I'm trying to understand, you just mentioned Hezbollah, and I'm taking you back just a second for Hezbollah. What is the current situation of Hezbollah? If Hezbollah is so isolated and they are trying to, who is smuggling the weapon to Hezbollah? Where are they exactly, and what is their power?
They are still controlling some very important strategic points in this western side of Syria, right next to the border with Lebanon. I would not underestimate Hezbollah when it comes to the area that they are now controlling. But it's a very good question because, according to some sources, at least between 3 and 10 Hezbollah fighters died today or were killed today in the fighting with the rebels over there. Hezbollah is not saying anything about their numbers of casualties. We are estimating, and when I say we as here in Israel and outside of Israel, we're talking about hundreds of Hezbollah fighters that were killed by the rebels in Syria. It's very problematic for them.
Yeah, it seems that Israel can be relaxed a little bit about what is happening in the north for now. Jan Zinger, thank you very much for this. And we're going out for a small break, 2 minutes, and I'll be back for the rest of the news today. Don't go anywhere. 2 minutes, and I'll be back. Greeks vote in a high-stakes referendum on the nation's financial future. With polls now closed, results are set to start coming in this evening on whether the people said yes or no to Europe. Opinion polls show no in the lead. 2 days before the new deadline for a nuclear deal amid intensive high-level talks in Vienna, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says now is the time to finish a deal, but that the parties are not yet at that point. And along with fighters of the Shiite Hezbollah, the Syrian army claims to have entered the rebel-held city of Zabadani, part of an offensive to capture the strategic border between Syria and Lebanon. Welcome back to the news today. Today is the 17th of Tammuz, according to the Hebrew calendar, a Jewish fast day marking the beginning of a 3-week mourning period leading up to Tisha B'Av. Despite the somber occasion, Jews were barred from accessing the Temple Mount compound on Sunday, with police citing stone throwing by Palestinian youths as the cause. Shai Ben-Ari has the details.
Sunday marked the 17th of Tammuz, a fast day which commemorates the breach of Jerusalem's walls ahead of the destruction of the Second Temple in the year 70 CE. But on this day, Jews were barred by Israeli authorities from accessing the holiest site in Judaism, the Temple Mount, known to Muslims as the Haram al-Sharif, or Noble Sanctuary. Despite the religious significance of the occasion, police decided to block a group of around 50 Jews and others from ascending to the site. When questioned, police sources cited stones being thrown at police by Palestinian youths near the Mughrabi Gate as a reason for the denial of access. This woman is a Christian who wished to visit the Temple Mount as a tourist.
We don't want to leave here until we can just walk on there for those few minutes, a short time of prayer, and it's very meaningful.
A report published last week by the NGO known as the International Crisis Group hints that Israel and Jordan have come to a certain understanding concerning limits on visits to the Temple Mount, with the overall objective being a lowering of regional tensions and improving security coordination between Israel, Jordan, and the Waqf, the Islamic Council which handles day-to-day affairs on the compound. The Temple Mount, which according to Jewish tradition was the site of the Jewish temples and according to the Muslim faith, the site of the Prophet Muhammad's ascension to heaven, remains a volatile and sensitive area at the heart of Jerusalem's Old City, mounting to about 37 acres. Ever since an assassination attempt back in October, which nearly killed activist Yehuda Glick, a proponent of Jewish ascension rights, Israeli authorities have enforced much stricter restrictions on the access of non-Muslims to the Temple Mount. Israel regularly limits the access of Muslims under the age of 50 to the compound during tense periods, and few Muslims are allowed into the Western Wall compound adjacent to the Temple Mount.
And with me here in the studio is military correspondent Shai Ben-Ari. Good evening. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Lucy.
So, Shai, you know, for somebody who is looking at the situation from outside, you'll say, I don't understand. Just a second. This is a holy place. I don't understand why to a holy place all religions cannot get in.
Well, indeed, it is a very unique situation, typical perhaps to the Middle East and not a lot of other areas where you have a democratic state barring its citizens according to their religion from and basically denying them freedom of movement according to basically because of security concerns, but still discriminating according to religion. The situation on the Temple Mount concerning non-Muslim visits has actually changed in the past few months since the assassination attempt against Yehuda Glick. The situation before that, there was more or less free access to non-Jews for about 3.5 hours per day. Now the situation is there are never more than around 14 non-Muslims, of course, on the Temple Mount at any one time, and sometimes as few as 5. It depends on the security situation. The police and other security forces judge it by him.
These restrictions came because of, let's say, extremists from the right wanting to go on Temple Mount and provoke some kind of, let's say, situation that maybe will deteriorate the situation even further in East Jerusalem or between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
Certainly, the people who typically try to advance these causes of ascension to the Temple Mount are certainly identified with the right. Some people see them as provocateurs. Others see them as simply rights activists who demand certain rights that are to be respected. Basically, freedom of movement when you talk about Jews being able to move around in their own homeland. Now, this does, of course, tie in with all sorts of sensitivities on the Temple Mount itself. This is a very sensitive area, and the Muslim authorities, the Waqf and so forth, are very concerned about any sort of escalation, and of course the Israeli authorities as well. This has to do with certain understandings reached between Israel and Jordan in recent months, and a general attempt to sort of lower the tensions in the region.
Yeah, the last time that we saw this kind of a situation deteriorating, it was when late Prime Minister Ariel Sharon went there, and that would provoke the second intifada.
Exactly. No less than a second intifada was provoked just by that visit. Still, many defend the visit and Sharon's right to ascend to the holiest site in Judaism, but generally that is seen even within Israel as a mistake, a political mistake by him that many people paid a grave price for. In the perspective of history, I think perhaps it will be judged again.
Let's not forget that he became a prime minister after this political mistake. Shai Ben-Ari, thank you very, very much for this.
No problem.
Pope Francis today began an 8-day trip to South America that will include Ecuador, Bolivia, and Paraguay, with a focus on poverty in his home continent. Annie Schatzberg has more on what's expected for the pontiff.
Pope Francis headed to his native continent of South America this morning, where he will embark on an 8-day pilgrimage in 3 different countries. The journey is meant to send a message of solidarity to the pious and marginally poor people of Ecuador, Bolivia, and Paraguay, home to 425 million Catholics. Although these nations make up nearly 40% of the Catholic population, Catholicism in South America is on the decline, which may be one of the reasons for the visit. The pontiff will begin his journey in Quito, Ecuador, which has recently been hit with a series of violent anti-government marches against tax increases and alleged government autocracy. Protesters will put the demonstration on hold this week out of respect for the Pope. Ecuadorians have been preparing for his arrival for weeks now, and over 1 million people are expected to attend the July 7th Mass in Ecuador's capital.
Obviously, this was a huge effort, but we did it with great excitement and enthusiasm. The city is ready to welcome Pope Francis and the thousands of foreigners that will also come to visit us.
Pope Francis will arrive in Bolivia on July 8th, where he is expected to defend the right of the indigenous people and visit the notoriously violent Palma Sola prison.
I would ask Pope Francis for justice to be made quickly and soon, because there are innocent people in here and criminals on the street. Pope, help all us poor people who need you.
Pope Francis will arrive in Paraguay 3 days later, where he will meet with several groups of social activists against smuggling and illicit financing. According to analysts, Paraguay is ranked as one of the most corrupt places in South America. Nevertheless, many Paraguayans seem ready to welcome the Pope with open arms.
He knows us very well, how hard we work here, how people struggle, and he knows about the violence. He has always supported us.
The Pope's native home of Argentina will not be on the agenda this time. He plans to visit his homeland next year, along with Chile and Uruguay.
As London prepares to mark the 10th-year anniversary of July 7th bombing that killed 52 people, police and emergency services say that they must be prepared for another attack, while those whose lives were scarred by the explosions continue to show their defiance.
It's now 10 years since 4 suicide bombers struck in the heart of central London during morning rush hour, killing 52 people and injuring hundreds more. There's little sign of that devastation now, but the memories are still strong. David Boyce was the station manager at Russell Square. He ran into a smoke-filled tunnel, not knowing what he would find.
The first person I came across, both his legs had got blown off. So, using my own clothes, I made a tourniquet, lifted his legs above his heart, made him more comfortable, let him know help was on the way. And then I went round each individual person who I could see was alive to try and help them out and try and stem the flow of blood from their limbs as much as possible.
This recent security exercise, London's largest ever, saw armed police respond to marauding gunmen. It's a scenario partly derived from the Charlie Hebdo attacks in Paris and came just after 30 Britons were shot dead on a Tunisian beach.
We have looked at events across and around the world since 7/7 and have said to ourselves, would we be ready if there was that style of attack, whether that be France or Tunisia or wherever it may be, would we be ready for that style of attack here in London?
Miriam Hyman was killed when a suicide bomber detonated an explosive on board a bus in Tavistock Square. Her mother and sister are introducing lesson plans on 7/7 into schools, where many younger students had never heard of the attacks.
You will never overcome the grief of losing a child. Never. The question is how you deal with that grief.
The day after the bombings, David Boyce returned to work at Russell Square. Most other Londoners did too, getting on with life, even if it would never quite be the same.
Yes, and we are returning now to the ongoing nuclear talks in Vienna, and still at this stage, not many Iranians are brave enough to speak out freely on the Islamic Republic. But Camelia Antika-Bifard, an Iranian journalist, was never afraid to openly criticize her nation, even when it cost her sitting in jail for almost 3 months. In a special interview in Vienna, Camelia told Eli Ochenberg about the face of the new Iranian generation, their desire to become an integral part of the Western world, and on the connecting lines between Tehran and Tel Aviv.
Dear Ms. Antika-Bifard, it's such a pleasure having you with us. Thank you so much for your time. Well, we're practically days, maybe even hours before signing this historic agreement. And, you know, looking back on this long process, how do you think the nations involved have changed, namely, of course, the Iranian people?
It was a very long process. Even Rouhani get engaged for 2 years, but in the previous time, Ahmadinejad time, that process begins. From so much fears of a confrontation and escalation may be broken between Iran and the United States, and sometime in Israel too, having so much fear and people being so sleepless, and having this historical moment for Iranian, which is welcome them back out of the isolation and in a participation of the international scenes, it's a very big change and a huge welcoming by the Iranians. I'm not sure if the whole entire region were welcoming the deals, but definitely the effects and also the consequences of such an agreement, it would benefit all, no matter if today they are disagreed or if they dislike, but I'm sure in the coming months and years they would be benefiting from this peace deal rather than only the nuclear deal.
Well, one of our colleagues here defined this agreement as the win of hope over isolation. And the Iranian people, the day after, what can we expect from them? Where do they stand? Do they want this deal or do they want a change of their regime?
This agreement, it's sort of welcoming Iran back again to the international community. In the past 36 years ago, the acceptance of the Islamic Republic of Iran has been jeopardized by lots of dimensions of the regional points of view and argue. Let's say Iran-Iraq's war, the terrorism which Iran always has been accused and they were rejected to be involved in supporting the groups such as Hezbollah and Hamas, and some unproved regional activities. We don't know, we don't have any documents for it, but it has been told Iran has been accused all the time. And of course, the hostage crisis in Iran of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, all of those consequences has been built up such a bad reputation for Iranian internationally, which it hasn't been accepted by Iranians home before the revolution, so much well received. You have a different prestigious in the post-revolution time. I don't want to say the people hasn't made the revolution, they did, but the way Iranian be treated in post-revolution and after the revolution has been painful for many Iranians. I has been raised in Iran, and I can at least speak of myself. Those deal is a peace deal. It's a deal which helps Iran to come back again slowly among of the well-respected countries.
Well, as mentioned in your books, the post-revolution generation is now taking over the regime and is, taking control over Iran's future, basically. And you have a fascinating life story, which you've also extensively talked about in your books, namely on the struggle of women in Iran. Tell us a bit more about it.
Sooner or later, the new generation has to take over the power. And I don't want to name it, but there are people, for example, the former presidents of Iran, and also the key assisting those people with them. Their children has been grown and has been studied abroad. And those people are, at least we could say somehow, they has been affected by Western education. The very much good example is Mr. Zarif. He was 18 years old when the revolution happened, and he was at the United States, finished his education, and today he is not representing that generation which we are talking about, but at least he's a very open-minded person. But those changes would come to Iran by their own, from the insiders. My own experiences about living and working in Iran, It was fascinating, but at the same time very difficult. I has been grown in post-revolution time, and I was working for a very much first launch reformist newspaper. My paper closed, and I had been in prison. Women in Iran are very different than, at least I could make a comparison with our Arab neighbors. They are educated, they are in the society actively. Iran gave the right to the females to cast their votes many, many years ago. And that hasn't been even exercised yet in many of the regional countries. For example, in Saudi Arabia, women still cannot drive. Or the vote casting has been granted to the people of Kuwait very recently. So Iranian women has that opportunities to speak up and have the power to participate in the society. Before the revolution, we have ministers, and so we haven't had any ministers yet, but we have been told there might be at this current government an ambassador would be appointed soon, or some of those advisors to the presidents are women. Still, because I believe our society are not as conservative as the government is. There is a very difference between our people and the government. And today they are here because they are reflecting that kind of thought and that kind of push. They can't live any longer with the sanctions and those isolations. And I'm very proud. I'm an international reporter, but I feel I can understand how much my people really looking forward for this deal. And I can hear them. They like to do much bigger.
Well, you describe the Iranian people as highly educated, open-minded, and you claim very bravely, I have to say, that this is the exact common ground between Iranians and no other than Israelis. You are talking about this secret desire of the Iranian people to communicate not only with the West, but with Israel.
Iranians are not against Israelis at all. And to be honest with you, there are so much compassion and support it has existing in Iran in between ordinary Iranians. And Iranians seeing themselves as a non-Arab minority in the region, which definitely Israelis are. Today might be the governments has been in a clashes with each other, which they cannot see any ground common attraction, but definitely Iranians were seeing themselves like they are friends with Israeli. They are for many, many years. They were a very good connection. Iran still is having the biggest community of Jews in the Middle East, regardless of if they can participate in the executive office and so on. So we are not too religious in Iran. Iranians are not kind of typical Muslims. And that's why we don't have any Iranian in Daesh. We don't have any Iranian ever has been accused doing those terrorist activities. And at the same time, Iranians are not supporting the government, the regime, supporting, for example, Hamas or Hezbollah. They believe that those money hasn't been to be paid at this way, which it doesn't given back to Iran anything. Definitely, I can tell you positively, Iranian doesn't like the way the government has been supporting such groups.
Ms. Antikabi Fard, thank you so much for this interview. It was so insightful, and again, I very appreciate your time with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. As archaeological gems are destroyed across Syria and Iraq, the World Heritage Committee this weekend anointed 6 new cultural sites from China to Iran to Mongolia. I-24 News reporter Uri Shapira has a closer look at a few of the most beautiful corners of the world.
Politics and World Heritage sites have never been so tied together. The World Heritage Committee approved the inclusion of new cultural sites on the World Heritage list today. Getting the nod are the Speicherstadt and Kontorhaus district in Hamburg, Germany, and the Singapore's Botanic Gardens. Another interesting site on the list is Israel's Bet She'arim, which the committee described as a landmark of Jewish revival and which was a primary Jewish burial place before being destroyed in the Second Jewish Revolt against the Roman Empire. It has been a difficult time for UNESCO, which is trying to protect some of the sites which are endangered. The committee included the old city of Sana'a, Yemen on the list of endangered World Heritage sites because of fierce battles which have taken place in the past months between Houthi rebels and the Saudi-led coalition launching airstrikes. Another UNESCO site in danger is the ancient Syrian city of Palmyra, which is in the spotlight after the extremist jihadist group, the Islamic State, seized it and threatened to destroy the valuable ruins, which dates back to the 1st century and contains evidence from the Roman Empire.
Never before in recent history have we seen such brutal and systematic destruction of cultural heritage used as a tactic of war to intimidate populations, to disseminate hatred, to destroy the very fabric of the Iraqi society. This is a war crime.
In the meantime, Australians can breathe a sigh of relief as the UNESCO committee decided not to include the Great Barrier Reef on the list of the endangered sites, a decision that will not affect shipping and port expansions. The UNESCO ruling comes after environmental groups campaigned to have the reef included, since it has lost 50% of its coral cover over the last decades. Now it seems that those sites can talk, but the argument regarding which will or won't be on the list are very loud.
Outside the Royal Sandringham estate in Norfolk, England, crowds gathered from early morning to be part of the christening of Princess Charlotte in an elaborate ceremony involving no less than 3 future kings. Here's Shahal Peled with more on the day.
As part of the traditional and almost never-ending celebrations of the birth of a new royal, 2-month-old Princess Charlotte was christened Sunday. Hours ahead of the ceremony, the heavy rain didn't stop the well-wishers and dedicated royal watchers who began flooding the gates outside the church. The private service took place at Mary Magdalene Church on the Queen's Sandringham estate in Norfolk, which dates back to the 16th century and is where the late grandmother Princess Diana was baptized. It was also a continuation of a historical event, as Kensington Palace shared over Twitter, showing today's lily font, which was commissioned in 1840, being used for the first time at Queen Victoria's christening. Only 22 people attended the church service, not including the Archbishop of Canterbury, who conducted the baptism. Prince Harry was unable to attend as he's spending the summer traveling in Africa doing conservation and charity work. Surprisingly, no member of the royal family made it onto the list of 5 godparents, but rather friends of Prince William and family members of the Duchess of Cambridge. Despite the grey skies, nothing could dampen the spirits of the die-hard royal fans, who once again seized the opportunity for a proper royal celebration.
And with me right now is the I-24 News Sports Magazine anchor, Jonathan Rega.
Good evening.
Yellow. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm sure that after yesterday's game, you are happy, joy.
This is the thing. I love Argentina. Argentina is my favorite.
Of course.
I love Chile.
Love Chile.
So I was partly sad because we lost in a penalty shootout. I was partly happy because we won in a penalty shootout.
You know that today somebody explained to me why Messi is not playing good like in Argentina?
Why?
Because he's playing in the back.
Yes. He's Coach Martino, which was his coach in Barcelona last year, puts Messi in a terrible position. They have not won anything in Barcelona under Martino last year. They did terribly in the final last night. And these are the winners. Chile, they won the Copa America for the first time. Here they're posing with President Michelle Bachelet. Yes, good for them. Right outside La Moneda Palace in Santiago. They deserve it. They were the better side. You know, just by seeing the fans singing the national anthem at the beginning, you know there's no way in the world they would lose it. And you know what? They deserve it. I'm happy for Chile. I love Argentina. I'm happy for Chile.
We always love the underdog.
What a difference between this Jonathan and the Jonathan after the World Cup last. Losing to Chile is one thing. Losing to Germany.
Amazing.
Don't get me started.
You're all like love.
Yes.
L-O-V-E, love.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about the
Women's
World Cup.
Yes, the final is tonight, U.S. against Japan. What a final. It's a rematch of the final we have seen last year. And Japan, not last year, the previous World Cup, 4 years ago, Japan won it by penalty shootout. The United States is always seen as the best in the world when it comes to women's football, soccer they call it, and they're favorites tonight, but they have so much to prove against Japan, which beat them in penalty shootout last time. So it's in a few hours in Vancouver. We should expect a great final. The U.S. are favorites. Japan is also a very, very good team.
I noticed that you have a problem with the United States calling it soccer and not football.
No, it's football, and you have invented this game.
But they have another football.
Yes.
You know, it's different football. Which is understandable.
Yes.
It's not the ball. It's not round.
It's not even a ball.
Like, right. Yeah. And
wife carrying competition.
Aww.
How romantic.
How sporty.
Yes. This happens in Finland. I do not know why, but the people in Finland are by far the best in the world when it comes to wife carrying. And this is the competition. And it's very simple. Drag your wife as far as you can and make it first to the finish line. You know what the winners get? It's called the liquid trophy. They weigh the wife. Whatever the wife weighs, that you fill the trophy with beer. The same weight.
This is the prize?
Yes.
Really, they're
beer
carrying
in the
their
weight
wife
of the wife. Yes.
For beer.
Yes. Could you be more masculine than that? I ask.
Could you be more romantic than this?
It's romanticism
It's like
at
it's
its best.
amazing.
Yes.
It's like not enough that you're carrying us in your hearts. You have to physically.
And drink beer.
Yeah.
And
amazing.
Drown yourself in beer after that.
Like really.
I don't know what I can say that make me look good now.
I wish this to myself.
Please carry me, husband, and drink beer
yes.
at the end.
Yes, yes. Jonathan Regev, carry yourself out.
Oh, don't worry, I will. Is there beer outside?
Yes. Waiting especially for you. Jonathan Regev, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy.
Yes, and reporting on the West Bank in Israel tends to be on conflict of one form or another, but the Palestinian Tourism and Antiquities Ministry is renovating an Asian synagogue in the West Bank city of Jericho, dating back to the 6th century AC. The mosaics span from some 350 square meters with motifs representing Jewish and Christian traditions. A roof is being built for the site, which will be added to the tourism sites in Jericho. Yes, and we're going out for a small break, 2 minutes this time, and I'll be back for the third part, and we will be here with a special reporting on the Greek referendum. Don't go anywhere. 2 minutes, and I'll be back. Welcome back to the news today with this special covering of the Greek crisis, economy crisis in Greece. And with results of the referendum in Greece expected to trickle in, we're back here covering the country's vote on its financial future. And the Greek Interior Ministry now projected that the no camp will get over 61% of the vote. Final results are, of course, still far off. And with me to discuss this in the next 30 minutes is a former Israeli ambassador to France, Avi Posner. Ambassador Posner, good to have you here.
Good evening, Lucy.
And also economy reporter for the Jerusalem Post, Niamh Ellis. Good evening, good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
But gentlemen, before we will start discussing this matter with you, let's go to live to Athens with our correspondent Daniel Roth. Daniel, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us. So we're seeing that the latest polls or the expectations are 61%. Somebody there is very, let's say, happy? Should they be happy?
Yeah. Here in Syntagma Square, we've got a lot of people here gathering around a tent that's been out since Monday with no signs all across it. And there's a few different types of people in the square tonight, but by and large, the majority of people are no voters, people out here expecting a no answer. And we've also heard that just over 60% have voted no. Now, to keep in mind, a minority of ballots have been counted. Less than a quarter have been counted so far. But there's also word that Prime Minister Tsipras will be making a statement shortly.
What is expected? What are we expecting to hear from Prime Minister Tsipras about this, let's say, the first 20% of the votes that the results that we're seeing right now?
We're expected to hear a triumphant speech. We're expected to hear elected Tsipras you know, he's not someone who's very well known for mincing words. He doesn't beat around the bush. He comes out and says what he thinks, even if he's letting himself be open to criticism. So I have a feeling that he's going to, when he does make a statement, come out and announce that the noes have it, and they have it by a wide enough margin for the noes to really claim victory in this referendum.
Yes, definitely. Daniel Roth, thank you very much. And of course, we will continue getting your updates from Athens. Gentlemen, I want to start with you. And really, we're seeing only 20% of the votes are being counted. And just we're in the process. But I want to take under consideration what will happen if we will see a reverse. What will happen if you won't see no, but we will see yes? What will it mean to Greece?
A yes vote in this referendum is going to put the government in a very uncomfortable situation because it's been very actively campaigning for no. This was the deal that they don't want to make. This is the deal that they didn't want to agree to. So if the people come out and say, yes, we want this deal, it's so important to us to seal a deal in order to stay in the Eurozone, that's going to be a big slap on the wrist to the government. And the question is the government going to be able to stay around after that? The finance minister has already said that he would resign. The question is, what would happen to the prime minister? Would he stay on? Would he resign? Would he reshuffle the government? And an interesting aspect that I don't think people have talked about enough is that if the government falls into chaos, they're on a very short time schedule right now in terms of everything that they need to do in order to get a deal done and stay in the euro. So if the government descends into chaos, if it's getting reshuffled, if it's not clear who's in power, or if they even call new elections, it's not really clear who's going to be behind the driver's wheel.
Is it a responsible thing to go and resign after the public is saying no? We said no. You gave us, let's say, for example, the decision. You asked us what we want to do. We're telling you, yes, we want to stay, and now you're resigning? What does it mean about the government?
Lucy, I think that in light of the first results, okay, the projection, we shouldn't even try to go into this territory, okay? I don't know whether he will get 61%, which is enormous, but even if he gets 55%, it's a big victory for Tsipras, okay? It's a big victory for him. I don't think we will see any scenario of him resigning. On the contrary, in a few hours, maybe you will hear a victory speech, even though it is not yet counted, okay? And he will try to go to Brussels as a winner, okay? If they're going to accept him, which is not sure.
I don't know, as we saw some surprises in the last few months. This is why I'm always taking, I will take this time the yes before I will take the no, the sure.
You know, Israel is the land of surprise. Seeing Greece, polls like that, you know, if there is really a poll of 61, even if it is less, I would be very, very surprised now. If the yes had it, okay, I would be very, very surprised.
So let's go to the comfortable zone. Let's take under consideration that the polls are actually true, and he is going to win by 60%, 55%, like you're saying. From the majority of the people are going to tell him, yes, we're with you. No, we're not. We're going to say no to the Eurozone. What it will mean for Angela, for France and Germany.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's been interesting is that throughout this campaign, Europe has really been trying to tell the Greek voters, listen, this is a referendum on the euro. But that was really a tactic to try to get them to come out and say yes. And that if that tactic failed, it doesn't actually, this is not some binding vote that suddenly, you know, oh, okay, well, they said no to June 25th's offer, which isn't really on the table anymore anyway, and now they're going to be out of the euro. It's still a process, right? So the question is really going to be, how does Europe choose to react to this? And they have a couple of options. They can go back to the negotiating table in good faith and see if they can work out a deal with a newly strengthened Tsipras, or they can decide that, you know, we've had enough. If this is what Greece wants, this is what Greece wants, and we're not going to get anywhere. But it's really in the hands of the European leaders now.
You know, I'm trying to understand the strategy, or let's say the policy that stands behind Germany and France, because until when, as Europe, you can ask the Greeks to stay under austerity? Until when you can ask the people to live under these conditions, to tell them, okay, another year and another year, you should still earn only this amount of money, while they're seeing their friends, they're seeing their neighbors actually coming to their country, enjoying from the great islands and spending money in their country when they cannot end the month.
You're absolutely right, Lucy. You have here a moral problem, okay? But there is also a political problem. France and Germany, first of all, Germany and France and most of the countries of Europe don't want to pay anymore for Greeks living lavishly, okay? It's a political problem. Merkel, it's not that she's a bad woman or that she wants to do something which is unpleasant. No. The public opinion in Germany and in France and in many countries of Europe is against any more concessions to Greece. So here we are in the unknown, okay? Because yes, Tsipras, I believe, will come strengthened to Brussels tomorrow after tomorrow, but he may get an icy shower, okay? Maybe Merkel and Sarkozy, who are meeting tomorrow, by the way, will just say, okay, sorry, we can't do anything for you. You have chosen no.
And they already threatened that they will do that, because they said, okay, if you decided to do this, it seems like Greece is like the stepson of Germany and France, and it's the stepson that you don't want actually to take care of, that he's always doing you problems, that he's like you're only spending money on him, and you don't get any gratitude. So, maybe they are also right.
But one of the problems is that it's not just Greece. It's not that Europe is in fantastic shape and that it's just Greece. And that's one of the big considerations that Merkel and Holland and, the other European leaders are thinking about. They're saying, okay, we could afford to bail Greece out. We could afford to do that. But then what, right? If Spain and Ireland and Portugal and Italy, if all the other countries that have had problems look and they see that Greece elected a far-left government, played very tough, did a lot of damage, and then what did they get? Really great terms on their debt deal? Then why shouldn't those other countries do that?
Let's see. Joining us right now on the phone is Stratos Fasiolias in Athens. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me.
My pleasure.
So, Stratos, what is, let's say, the ambience right now in Athens?
Well, I'm working at Syntagma Square, which is the central square of Athens, in front of the parliament. Lots of people rejoicing with flags, Greek flags. I think more people will be coming in the next few hours. And there are tons of media from all over the world broadcasting live from the hotels around and inside the square. I think the people it's a celebratory mode, because for them the question was whether they should go with a plan that induced more austerity, and this was no to all the troubles they have gone through for the past 2 years. The problem is that it's a different way. It's different what the referendum was asking. The people responded to a different question, and I'm worried that Europe is reading the answers in a different fashion. The result is overwhelming. It's projected to be 60%.
Stratos, for me it seemed today, if I watched the news all day and I saw the feelings and I saw everybody going out and actually going out to vote, maybe on basically on their future. But Stratos, it felt more like this, it was a national vote. It felt like the Prime Minister is going on the personal feeling, the inner feelings of being like under one national community. Let's say we're struggling with this situation right now all together, and we need to put our hands together and get out. But I'm trying to understand if this is the correct way to play on the tune of the hearts of the people, instead of actually being and going to the bottom line and saying, okay, you know what, maybe we do need to stay, maybe we don't have the forces to actually solve this problem.
Well, listen, 60% empowers him, right? So he has the answer from the people. It really depends how he's going to handle it. He can go and form, let's say, a coalition negotiation team from all the parties, and then go to the European creditors and try to get a deal. Or he can face problems from his leftist opposition inside his party, who will say, listen, you got a 6% no. And they said no, it's not maybe no. So now you have to go with force against the terms of the Europeans. The reality on the ground, though, is very different. The banks are closed. The cash is almost over. There's not going to be any banks tomorrow morning. And I think the Prime Minister has to think very clearly what his next step, as the European partners as well. This is not a test. This is the real deal. We're talking about the possibility of Grexit or Brexit. So I think now we have to have prudence from all sides.
Yes, Stratos Fasiolis, thank you very, very much for this conversation with us. And before we will continue, a situation as complicated as the one in Greece doesn't happen overnight. Steve Jordan and Ayman Siksik look at the past 5 years on just how Greece arrived at this point.
8 austerity plans in 7 years, 60% unemployment among young adults, and a booming suicide rate. How did Greece get here? The socialist Yorios Papandreou discovered the gravity of the situation in 2009 when he became the new prime minister. He took over from a liberal conservative party which had left an appalling deficit and an extremely well falsified public account. Athens, no longer trusted by the different markets, was downgraded by the credit rating agencies. It was in this context that the first austerity measures were implemented by Papandreou's government. How to regain the market's trust? Just like at the beginning of the 2000s, with the help of the Lehman Brothers Bank. But as the bank was reassuring the potential investors, it was also speculating against Greece itself. May 2010, the first international bailout program was launched. The Troika gave a 110 billion euro loan to the Greek government. After that, 4 new austerity plans were presented, one after the other. In November 2011, Papandreou announced a referendum would be held on restructuring Greek debt in exchange for a strengthened control of the Troika over the country. But as creditors pressured him, Papandreou cancelled the referendum and had to resign. He was replaced by the technocrat Loukas Papademos, before he himself was replaced by Antonis Samaras in 2012. 3 austerity plans later, in a country about to suffocate, Tsipras led his radical left party to victory in the general election and promised to end the Greek descent to hell. Over 5 years, the Greek GDP has lost about 1/4 of its value. None of the economic sectors had been spared by what is nowadays considered the longest recession ever experienced by a country since the American Great Depression, which began in 1929 and lasted about 10 years.
Yeah, you know, gentlemen, because it's not a situation that happened just one day, just they woke up and they understood that they have really big economic problems. And I'm trying to understand why in the first place Greek needed to get into the Euro.
Because there was easy money, okay? It was easy. It was easy. It was a mistake, by the way, from the European to take in Greece. But they wanted Greece for all kinds of reasons, even cultural and historical reasons. They wanted Greece inside. But even after Greece entered the European community, they continued to spend without counting. You know that in Greece, public servants have 13 and 14 salaries a year. You know, you get your salary every month, and then at the every half year, you get an additional salary. You know that in Greece, pensions for elderly people are twice as big as in Holland, for example, okay? So they spent and spent and spent for 20 years without counting. And then comes the time for reckoning, comes the time that you have to pay. Our heart goes to the people of Greece. It's terrible, you know, to go to the bank and to get out of the bank with 60 euro per day. What can you do with 60 euro per day? You have to pay rent, you have to pay the doctor, you have to pay. It's a terrible situation. But it's not only the 5 years. It's the 20 years since, I think, in 1986, Greece entered the European Union. And from that time, they started to celebrate, okay? I went to Greece a few times. It was a beautiful country. Everything was available. Money was there. but sometimes you have to pay your debts.
You know, maybe if we're looking at the situation, maybe it's a cultural problem. Maybe it's the way that you're being educated, because, you know, you need to also know how to spend money. You need to also how to study and learn how you save money. And maybe it's something about the culture that, you know, we're living in an island. It's very nice. We're working only 6 months a year. And everything else will be fine, and we will adjust to the situation as it is.
I mean, I feel like people could have made that same argument about the Israeli culture at a certain point. And in fact, if you looked at our economy in the 80s, we were having a very bad situation. But the point is that we came around and figured it out. I don't think it's about the culture. I think it's about the political institutions. Greece has had a lot of corruption over the years. And unfortunately, they just have never reformed. They've never had the desire to reform. And as you were saying, you know, they had the out because they were in the EU, because they were in the Eurozone. They could borrow cheaply. They could live as though they were functioning on a higher level politically, but their institutions just weren't there. I mean, these pensions, you know, they let people in when they were in their 50s. They made people work far less time. But now I think one of the things that's interesting is that even though this is a very bloated pension system, part of it's not that the people are getting, you know, a huge amount that they can go out and spend. A lot of them are getting pensions that are below the poverty line. The problem is that a lot of it is on the government books. A lot of it is people that have been retired, you know, for 15 or 20 years already. It was something that was for a long time unsustainable. So this adjustment is going to necessarily be a really painful one.
So let's see the German side of it. Joining us right now to this conversation, German journalist Ulrich Zaum. Good evening. Always good to have you with us.
Good evening.
So Ulrich, try to explain to me, if you were a fly on the wall of Angela Merkel right now, that is going to meet François Hollande tomorrow, what do you think that you will see basically in that room?
I would probably see a very desperate Angela Merkel. There are already cartoons in the newspapers saying that she's the chancellor in the ruins, in the rubble. It was Merkel who gave all the money, all the good German money, to the Greek, and therefore she should have known that she would never get the money back. The main banks, and especially the state banks, will not make any profit this year, and therefore they will not give any money to the governments, and therefore there will be a loss of billions and billions of euros in Europe.
Ulrich, can she really allow herself and her country to actually get to the point that Greece is getting out of the Eurozone and to basically take the responsibility on it?
Well, the problem is that Germany did play a very essential role. And it was Germany that gave the money. And whatever comes out of this Greek vote today, nobody really knows what will happen. It's clear that it will, however the results are, it's clear that Europe, and especially Germany, will lose a lot of money because the Greeks aren't paying back. As simple as that. On the other hand, we have Germans like Frank-Walter Steinmeier, who is very afraid of Greece getting out of Europe. Greece is a partner in the NATO. All the refugees coming from Syria through Greece to Europe. And also the energy part is important. You know that Israel wants to build some kind of a gas pipeline to Europe, instead of the pipelines from Russia, which are not very safe anymore because they're going through Ukraine. So therefore, Israeli gas may play a major role, and that goes through Greece.
Yeah, Ulrich, stay with us, please. And let's try, gentlemen, to play some game. Let's try to play a game here. What will be if we will see actually Greece getting out of the Eurozone? That will basically maybe will create a domino effect, and we will see one state after the other falling apart, and we will see the entire Eurozone actually collapsing. What it will mean to us in the world.
I mean, absolutely that there is a big danger if Greece goes, then there are going to be other countries. Now, there are actually people making the opposite argument. They're saying, look, Greece broke the rules. Greece couldn't stick to its obligations, and if it's gone, it'll show that the rules mean something, and the other countries will get in line. And they're not in as bad a situation as Greece is financially or economically, but still there will be pressure. The euro will be weaker. They're going to have to raise costs for borrowing. And what that means is that basically, you know, this long recession that Europe has been struggling to get out of is going to be back. You know, that the entire global economy is going to once again stumble.
I think it would be the easiest thing for Europe just to let Greece go. You know that Europe cannot throw out Greece. It has to be a Greek decision, okay? But it is very easy to have such a Greek decision. You just close the bank and there's no money flowing into Greece. What are they going to do? They will have to print their own money. They will go out of Europe. So what will Europe lose? Let's say that there is a Greek exit and only a Greek exit. They will lose about 300 billion euro, okay? This is Greeks' debt to Europe. I think
small money.
It's but for a continent like Europe, it's true. It will create some difficulties, of course, but it will not have the Lehman Brothers effect on Europe. Okay, you will have 1 or 2 more years of economic contraction, and they will have gotten rid of Greece.
But it's a funny strategy to say, you know, we'll just let you go and we'll give up all of the debt that you owe us in order to not have to cut down the debt that you owe us.
You know, maybe it's the easiest. You know, maybe it's easy because of what you said before, of countries like Portugal and Spain and maybe Italy, less Italy, but Portugal and Spain. You want to deter those countries for going the way Greece goes.
They are really hot temper, you know. Portugal
they're all Mediterraneans.
They're all
really Mediterraneans, you know.
Just like us, just like the Greeks.
Yes.
Ulrich, yes.
I want to introduce here a completely different element. I heard in Germany today that there are people with good names who say we cannot leave the poor Greek people as they are. We must give them humanitarian aid. That is a very German mentality, and you know, they think that they will have to help just to help the poor Greek people, no matter if they pay taxes, don't pay taxes, if they take loans or not. We have to help them.
You know, I don't know if you saw this on the internet, on Facebook and on the internet, that Greece is trying to kickstart like some kind of a donation from all over the world. Yes, crowdfunding campaign from all over the world. And this, like, you know, I'm trying to think what will happen if actually the people of the world will end up saving Greece.
Well, the problem is they only managed to get something like 1% of the bailout that Greece missed paying last week, and the bailout that they have coming up is about 2.5 times that. So
it's not going to help them.
It's not going to get there.
Like our 10 euros are not going to help them.
Not going to make a difference.
Yeah, you know, listen, I was chairman of the Appeal for Israel of Keren Hayesod, and I know how difficult it is to get money even from Jews for Israel. So I imagine what it will be for Greeks to get money, let's say, from America for Greece. I like the scenario, Mr. Zam. I like the scenario, but I don't think it is very realistic.
You know, I'm trying really to think about a situation right now where who will bail or who will fall for first? Will it be the Greeks that after, maybe we'll take the scenarios, that after that people gave the support to Tsipras, he will say, you know what, you gave me the support, now maybe I can go and get some kind of an understanding and get down from this tree that I climbed. Mm-hmm. Is it something possible that he will have to go and negotiate?
I think he absolutely wants to negotiate. I think that's why he called this referendum. I think that now he's got a chip that's somewhat more powerful than what he had a few weeks ago. But the question is, you know, the thing is that it's not up to him, right? It's up to everyone that he's negotiating with to decide how far are we willing to go. How much do we care what the Greek people think? If the Greek people have made this decision, should we just let them live with it, you know? They're the ones that have to decide whether or not they want to spend their money to help Greek pay off its debts.
Oleg, what do you say?
Well, according to what I hear and see in Germany, it's clear that nobody wants to lose those 300 billion euros. And it's clear that some kind of negotiations will go on. Maybe Mr. Tsipras will have a stronger position now in Brussels, and tomorrow he's going to Brussels, as I understood. The Europeans don't want to lose Greece. They don't want to lose the money. And I believe that somehow they will have to discuss how to get out of this whole situation.
Yes, Mr. Pasner, one sentence?
Yeah, what I thought that Tsipras is really playing brinkmanship. I mean, this is like a poker game, you know. You put money on the table and you don't know whether the cards of your opponents are not better.
Yeah,
okay?
We should put him in the Iran negotiations and see what happens then.
Maybe. This is a good idea.
So.
Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for being with me in this part. Oleg Zahn, thank you very much for being with us on Skype. And thank you, our viewers, for being with us tonight. Tomorrow we will be here at the same time, same place from the Jaffa Port, Israel. Have a great night. Of course, we're continuing to update you regarding Greece.